Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Buenos dias, damas y caballeros. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sung-Hoon Kim, and I'd like to welcome you to the International Civil Aviation Organization's 40th Assembly SkyTalks. Over a two-week period, we have 68 presentations from aviation industry professionals for your viewing pleasure. I would invite you to come to check out the ICAO channel on YouTube for more information. This is day 6, session number 4, and we continue our discussion on big data and how it helps us make important decisions in aviation. Would you please welcome our next presenter, Manoosh Valipour, the Management System Analyst Officer at our Air Navigation Bureau. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, for the introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm hello to our viewers online. My name is Manoosh Valipour. I work in the Air Navigation Bureau of ICAO headquarters. And for the next few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about a topic that's starting to become very relevant. It's starting to become very popular. And we're starting to see a lot of day-to-day applications for it, data-driven decision-making. I was just checking online to see if there's any information about the number of decisions the average human brain makes in a day. So if you want to take a guess, is it in the hundreds? Is it in the thousands? So there were several sources that claim that each human being, on an average, makes 35,000 decisions every day. That's a huge number. Now, nobody really knows where that number came from, the number that appears on several online websites. But even if we believe that the number is a little bit exaggerated, it won't be hard to imagine that we definitely make thousands of decisions every day. Some of them are so built into our brains, into our routines, into our habits, that we do them without even thinking, subconsciously. Some of them are probably made on a semi-conscious basis, and some more complex decisions, especially when it comes to our professional domains, on bigger life decisions or work decisions, they're conscious, and we know that we're in a process of making a decision. So this is something that we all do on a day-to-day basis. Small decisions, bigger decisions, it's all about decisions, decisions, decisions. Just a few examples of how each one of us probably use information and data, maybe without knowing, maybe while we're paying attention, to make decisions. So for those of you who were here in Montreal yesterday, we had a terrible rainstorm, several streets flooded by the end of the day, and navigating the streets was really hard going home. So this morning, trying to figure out if I had to wear waterproof rain boots, if I had to carry a bigger umbrella, if I had to wear a raincoat, these were a series of probably trivial, but data-driven, information-driven decisions that I had to make this morning. And my source for the relevant data was the weather report from Montreal. Is it going to rain? What time? Is it going to rain as much as yesterday? So something mundane and everyday like that really informed my decision by looking at the source, the weather report for the city for the next 10, 12 hours, to make a decision about how I was going to accessorize myself in order to go out, come to work, and be able to go home in the evening without getting too wet. A lot of us are trying to make better decisions about the food we eat. So if you go to the supermarket and you pick up a food item, before you buy it, maybe like myself, you turn it around and you look at the nutritional value table, which gives you information. It gives you data about what's in the food that you're considering buying. And based on the outcome, based on health goals, or nutritional goals that you have in mind, you make decisions based on that little table with percentages and data that it's being offered to you. So you see that we automatically use data and information to make a lot of decisions. When it comes to bigger issues, when it comes to more professional decisions at work, in your capacity as aviation experts, managers, decision makers, do you do that? Do we use information? Do we use data to inform our decisions and make sure that we're making better decisions or not? What we want to do when we go to these sources of data, when we use information for decision making, is because we basically want to avoid making poor decisions. Because we know poor decisions are going to impact our resources, meeting the expected outcomes, the needs and expectations that we have in mind. Poor decisions are going to stop us from attaining those goals. They could involve loss of resources, time, money, and in the end, we may come out worse than where we were before making the decision. Particularly in aviation, poor decisions could have fatal consequences, obviously, whether it's safety-related or security-related, or in the long run, environmentally related decisions. If we don't make good decisions based on factual data and information, the outcome of our decisions could be fatal, could have major harm and damage done to people, lives, the environment, infrastructure, equipment, resources, etc. So as decision makers, whether we're making trivial, mundane, everyday decisions in our personal lives, or whether we're dealing with bigger decisions in our domain of aviation, we want to make sure that we achieve the best possible outcome and we minimize poor results. So that's where we focus in the decision-making process using data and information. But good decision-making is not an easy thing to do. I was thinking, there are people who seem to have very good luck when they invest their money, whether it's through the stock market, whether it's going into new business. And sometimes we look at them and we say, well, that person was lucky. But was it luck? Or were they able to collect enough information, good information, clean and relevant information to help them invest their money in a way that their money would not only be safe and secure, but would also grow and give them good dividends? So it's not easy to make good decisions, but it's doable. The more information and the more data we collect and use, the better and cleaner decisions we will end up with. Another problem is that people in general tend to make decisions sometimes by whim, by relying on their momentary desires and opinions, by hearsay. I heard so-and-so did this, so I'm going to repeat the same decision and I'm going to expect the same results. And we know that the world around us is changing. There are a number of factors that are constantly evolving. There are a lot of unknowns, and we don't really know what we might get, even if we repeat the same patterns of decision-making without relying on up-to-date, factual, and relevant information in the moment. And it's human nature to have bias. It's human nature to have subjective opinions. So once they also come into the process of decision-making, our decisions and the outcomes of those decisions could also be impacted. So data-driven decision-making, or DDDM, or D3M, these are all common abbreviations if you've seen them, is a process that allows decision-makers to bring in results of data analysis before they make decisions. So the methodology gives the decision-maker a more informed platform, a more effective platform, because the decision is made on the result of analysis of factual and credible data. The benefits of D3M, obviously, we mentioned quite a few, but one of the biggest benefits of D3M is that it allows the decision maker to really focus on the problem. What is the decision that you want to make? What is the expected outcome? What is it that we want to achieve after the decision process is completed? So there is a systematic, step-by-step approach in the data-driven decision-making methodology that allows the decision maker to focus on the problem, to put the problem in the right context, to know exactly what outcomes and expectations are to be achieved, and then find a solution that fits the problem that has been clearly defined. So that is one of the main benefits of D3M. Another benefit, obviously, is using factual and credible evidence to see how the decision is shaped, where the decision maker starts, where the process ends, and what the outcome is. This is one of those key points that I think is becoming very poignant in our world these days, because the simple notion of fact is being challenged. What is fact? Is it fact just because I say so? So we are entering times not just in the social, political, cultural environment of the world we live in, but also probably in the organizations we function, because traditionally we rely on someone's opinion. We go to experts to see what they think. How do you feel about this? What should we do? And these are all valid approaches, but they should be complementary to the use of data and information. So what we say in the big picture of data-driven decision-making is, once you have the results of the data analysis, that's not necessarily the end. You're not just going to look at maybe some dry numbers on a chart or on a graph to make your decision. You still need experts. You still need informed humans. You still need people from different cross-functional elements to come in and contribute to the numbers that the factual and evidence-based process of using data analysis has offered to the organization. Another benefit, obviously, is minimizing the human bias, influence, and human error by relying on factual, good quality, clean data. Data-driven decision-making allows decision makers to zoom in on areas of strength or weakness, where opportunities lie, where there are limitations or risks. So some examples are, for example, if an organization is good at doing something, if there is a technical or operational aspect of your organizations that you're good at, that's your strength. So by looking at patterns, looking at data that show what you're good at, is it possible for you to repeat doing what you're really good at? And can you focus on improving some of those elements so you even become better at what you do? You can achieve that by using data to make decisions. Where are your strengths? What does the data indicate? The same applies to weaknesses. Are there areas where you're lacking resources or expertise, for example? Do you need to provide more resources? Do you need to hire more experts? Because the data suggests there are areas where your operations are maybe suffering from certain weaknesses and deficiencies. Opportunities and limitations. Is something happening outside there in the world that is a new area? So it's really uncharted, not a whole lot of players and competitors are doing that kind of new work. Does the data suggest that these are opportunities for you to explore so that you can then go and put your resources and your efforts into those areas? What about limitations? Can you look at data patterns, analysis results for existing data to see if your organization has limitations in resources, in the way the mandates, the objectives, the mission statement of the organization cannot support the work that the experts want to do? Is there data suggesting that? Can you use that to see where else you can be maybe focusing your efforts and resources? And obviously risks. This is something that is becoming very relevant in the use of data-driven decision-making in aviation. If you look at the requirements related to the implementation of the State Safety Program, SSP, or Safety Management Systems, SMS, it's all about looking where the risks are. Where are the safety risks? What is it that you need to contain because you know there are hazards and issues and deficiencies lurking that then could exaggerate these risks that could then have fatal unwanted consequences? Right? So a lot of that, as the scope of the work becomes bigger and as the variety of issues become more complex, can't be done just by relying on opinion and just the experts coming in and guessing what needs to be done. In order to achieve good results, contain risk, maximize strengths, and look at where limitations and weaknesses can be improved, we need data. Now, we like to say data-driven decision-making is a really good thing. Obviously, we've been talking for several minutes about the benefits of this approach, but the approach also has some disadvantages. One of the biggest disadvantages is probably the need for time, money, and resources, experts. If you've heard the term big data, that's what we're facing right now. Big data is huge, high volumes of data coming at us at very high speeds. So our current infrastructures, our current structures for the databases that most of us use, or the analysis software that a lot of us apply, just can't cope with the volume, the speed, and the complexity of big data. So in order to be prepared to do really good, effective data analysis and to implement D3M effectively, we need money, we need time to build the procedures and the infrastructure and the algorithms that will support the analysis, and we may need experts that we don't already have in our organizations. I talk a lot about data-driven decision-making, building indicators, safety data analysis in the form of workshops and training courses that I provide all over the world to our member states, to our stakeholders. And one of the first questions I ask in the room, where we have sometimes up to 40, 50 participants in a workshop, is how many in the room taking a course or a workshop on data-driven decision-making or developing indicators have a background of data science? Usually there's no one raising their hand, maybe one. Who in the room has a background in statistics and data analysis or complex mathematics that can build algorithms for data analysis? Not a whole lot of hands go up. But we're all put in a position where we have to do the work without having the right expertise. So we either have to start re-educating ourselves, or we have to bring in experts with new abilities, new knowledge and background that can do the work. And that's going to cost time and money. So this is probably one of the bigger disadvantages of D3M. Another issue is cultural. In our organizations, as I said, a lot of us just tend to rely on random decisions, basing the decisions on someone's opinion without having the backup of factual and evidence-based data. And making that transition is hard. For us to sit around the table, have a cross-functional team of experts, come together, look at concrete results of data analysis, and then debate based on the concrete numbers, the hard numbers, what the decision needs to be, right? That's a hard shift culturally in an organization. So especially when we bring different people to the table, obviously it's like people are trying to divide a loaf of bread, pulling from different angles. Everybody wants the better, bigger piece. But we all have to come to a balanced decision that would benefit the organization as a whole. But bringing in the data piece, combined with conflicting and competing interests, on top of that, the opinion and the subjective bias of experts, people with a lot of experience in the organization, that's going to be a hard transition. But it's inevitable, and we have to prepare for it. So we have basically built a simple 8-step process to implement data-driven decision-making. The key point, the first step, is putting the problem in a very clear context. As I said earlier, that's also an advantage of D3M, because without knowing what actual problem we're going to solve, what the expected decision is going to address, what kind of priorities do we want to build, the process can't really take off. So the first step is clearly defining the problem that needs to be solved and the decision that needs to be made. Supporting that in step 2, we need to be clear about the objective. Why are we collecting the data? Why are we analyzing it? Is there a link between the data and the problem statement that we have put in place in step 1? In the following steps, we focus on determining whether we have the data that we need or not. If we have data, the work might be a little bit easier. But if we don't have data, then where does the data come from? Does somebody have it? Where do we get it from? How much data is enough data? Is it too much or too little data? Then there are questions about the quality of the data. Is your data clean enough? Because if you have quality issues, if you have quote-unquote noise in your data, it could affect your end decision, your end final outcome. So in steps 3, 4, 5, there are a number of issues related to data quantity and quality that we need to look at, and issues about collecting and organizing the data in order to analyze it. In the final steps of the process, we deal with doing the analysis, building algorithms that will crunch the numbers, give us a final usable result, and then reporting the results in a format that is relevant and usable and helpful to the final decision makers. And that's where you have a lot of visualization techniques, choosing and using different charts and graphs for your reports. That's where the visualization tools come into the picture. Just to illustrate a few examples of how we have actually used data-driven decision-making at ICAO, I would like to share a couple of examples. If you were present on the first day of the 40th Assembly last week, at the opening ceremony, you may have been present at a ceremony where the ICAO Council President awarded the President's certificate to a number of states that had achieved really high results in safety or security related fields. Our department actually built the methodology for the analysis of the data that determines those states every 3 years at Assembly. We built this about 4 years ago. It was initiated in 2015 based on a request received from the President of ICAO Council. And the problem statement was very clear. So we were already hitting the requirements of step 1. The objective was to select states from each ICAO region which had made significant progress in resolving their safety deficiencies by looking at how they were improving and raising their effective implementation scores. So in 2015, our main focus was on safety audits, and this year the concept was extended to security audit results as well. So we basically had some criteria. We needed to know that the state had no significant safety concerns. We had to make sure that the state had at least 60% effective implementation score. And we had to make sure that the improvement the state had made since their last audit was at least 15 percentage points. And here I'm showing you a few slides from the actual Excel tables that we used. So very simple analysis, but it was still a very good use of the concept of data-driven decision-making. So we had the results of USOP, Universal Safety Oversight Audit Program audits that were done over many, many years. And we just basically put them in Excel spreadsheets, and we applied our criteria one by one, and we filtered them down until we had the final list that generated the certificates that the President of Council was able to award at the last assembly. Another example I would like to share with you for the use of data-driven decision-making. Again, I mentioned the implementation of SSP and SMS. So one of our colleagues in a DGCA in Europe, they went through the exercise of building indicators for their state safety program, SSP. And it's very common when we do an exercise in our workshops, when we tell our participants, suggest some indicators that you would like to work on. a lot of times it's very common for participants to suggest runway excursions and incursions. And their indicator is decreasing or eliminating, cutting down the number of runway incursions and excursions. So in this DGCA, they went for that traditional indicator, and they said this is going to be our top priority in terms of analysis of safety risks associated to runway excursions and incursions. When they actually analyzed the data, just cleaned it up before major analysis was done, they realized that the biggest frequency of data indicated that their big problem was not runway excursions or incursions, it was loss of control. So although their approach to the 8-step process was a little bit out of sync, they thought they had a clear problem statement, which was not the case. They started working, and once they cleaned up the data, they realized the problem was something else. That was another interesting application of data coming into the picture and helping them identify another objective that they needed to focus on. So as you see, these are real examples, real applications of data-driven decision-making even at ICAO. These are examples that we also use when we do a lot of our workshops and training courses. One last note, we have actually built a training course with the ICAO Global Aviation Training Office, GAT. It's a course on aviation data-driven decision-making. It has an online component, which takes about 15 hours to complete. It takes participants through the theoretical part of data-driven decision-making, and then it's followed up by a 4-day classroom course where participants actually come to the classroom where they do a lot of hands-on exercises, case studies, and they go through the 8-step process of data-driven decision-making, focusing quite a bit on issues related to data quantity, quality, analysis, and visualization of results. So I hope this summary of a new concept that we're all going to be implementing very soon was helpful and relevant. We have a few more minutes for questions. If there are any, I'll be happy to address them. And I'm here after the presentation. If you would like to have another chat, I'll be happy to do that. Do we have any questions from the floor? Yes, sir.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for the presentation from Alexis Bradwitt from Trinidad and Tobago. Well, first of all, is there a cost for this course? And at the Economic Commission, the idea of cost for all of this data was brought up. Participants were mentioning how expensive it was to access this data, and were pushing ICAO to make a lot of this data available, for free or reduced cost. How is that going to impact what you have been doing?
Sure. So to answer your first question, thank you for the question. The first item, this course is offered through GAT, the Global Aviation Training Office of ICAO. It is not a free course. It's a training course with a certificate issued, so you can check the catalog and see the price offered. But when it comes to the cost for data, and that's a very valid question, what we try to do at ICAO, and also the message that we try to share with our stakeholders, yourselves, is that try to find free data if you can. The reality is that data is everywhere. We may not know where to find it, but it is everywhere. I always use the analogy of, I'm sure you don't have this person in your organization, but I've had the pleasure of working with some who had data, usually in a file folder, before the days of relying on USB keys or hard drives. The person would lock the data in their drawer at night. They had data. Nobody knew they had it, and they wouldn't share it. So I think it's a very common, real analogy of the fact that data is available. It's hard to find it, but that's the first step. Once you have your problem definition, once you know what you want to do, then you start looking for who may have the data. Where could it possibly reside in the organization? Usually it's possible to find the data for free or for very low cost. It's usually the last option where you have to go and buy data from commercial sources. At ICAO, I believe my colleagues have already presented SIMS, Safety Information Monitoring System. There was a SkyTalk a few days ago on the topic. Another colleague presented iStars, which is a platform with a lot of data for free. So these are ICAO products that we can share with you for free. The only cost for you is a couple of minutes to fill out a subscription form, submit your request, and have access to the data. But there's only so much ICAO can do. Whatever we can get in terms of data, we're sharing for free. But if that's not enough for your needs, first of all, you need to look for available data in your organizations. So start doing an inventory list of who has what. It's a very, very useful, simple, but very useful, helpful exercise. The other option is looking at states in your region or sub-region to build some kind of a partnership, because generating data internally is hard, or finding data just in your organization may have limitations. But once you start getting into sharing and exchange platforms, then you're really creating value based on the data that different players in your industry or in your region or in your line of work have. So these are all topics that can be a matter of discussions for hours and hours. But the good news is that if you start looking, you will find data for free. So I'm hoping that you don't have to spend too much money buying data. That should really be your last resort. I hope I answered your question. Any further questions? I think we have a few more seconds left. And if there are other questions, I'm available after the presentation. So thank you very much, and it was good to be here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you.